Hello, welcome. My name's Dionne Swift. I am a textile artist. I'd like to walk you round my exhibition at Helmsley Art Centre. I studied textile art at Goldsmith College many moons ago, and since then I've been a practising artist and tutor, and I exhibit internationally, I teach internationally, and I run online workshops as well. And I was very grateful to have the opportunity to exhibit and have a solo show here at Helmsley. Sadly, it's behind closed doors at the moment, but nevertheless you are still able to walk around it and get a guided tour with me. Well, I'm a textile artist, so I sew rather than paint or draw. I do draw in order to inform my stitch work, but these pieces that you see along this wall are all stitched, and they reference some of my journeys, in particularly through New Zealand. A couple of years ago, we took a fantastic family trip to New Zealand, and I would draw en route. This one in particular here is called Gannets. We took quite an epic walk to see a colony of gannets, and we had to time ourselves with the tides so that we could actually get back safely. And when you take a close look at all of these pieces, you can see the variety of threads that I use, the different weights of threads that actually indicate different marks and different weights of marks. So where a traditional artist might pick up a thick brush, I will pick up a thick thread. Where they might want a matte surface on their painting, I would use a matte thread. Where they might want shine, they might put some varnish, for instance, or some gold leaf. And I would either use a metallic thread or something shiny, a viscose thread that would catch the light. So I can make direct comparisons between the type of work that a traditional artist might do and the way that a textile artist might translate those marks. You can see that a lot of my work is quite abstract in its content. That's my aesthetic. That's how I see the world. And this piece, if I focus on this one for a moment, this is Racetrack, and it came from a very small drawing that I did in my sketchbook when I was teaching in Australia about 12 months ago. No, sorry, not 12 months ago, just a few months ago, back in November 2019. And it was a small, pretty quick drawing focusing on the key elements of a scene that was in front of me. And where the light was catching the scene, I have used metallic threads. I've used my stitches, so I work with free machine embroidery, which basically means I'm drawing with my sewing machine, and I've used those drawn stitches in the same direction as I would use my pencil on paper. And I analyse the original drawings to give me the information that shows me where I should be putting these particular stitches. This large piece behind me is called Old Road Grande, and it was the old road. We were travelling on the old road from through Switzerland. So we were travelling from the UK in Yorkshire and then going down to Italy and driving, so going through the mountains in Switzerland, and we had to get detoured off the main road, and we ended up on this old road. We were kind of a bit lost, it was kind of getting a bit late, and we'd been in the car for days, and I was drawing in the car. I car draw on very long journeys. It gives me something to do, something to occupy my time with, but it means that when I draw, I have to cut out an awful lot of detail. I maybe only have a couple of seconds to create a drawing, and because the scene changes, and I work from life. I don't make stuff up when I draw. So I have a couple of moments to put something down on paper, and then I elaborate some more from those drawings when I get back to the studio. And this piece shows this road. This is the old road going round the bend, round the corner. You often don't know where you're going to in my work. Round this corner there's always a road or a street or a pathway that tucks round somewhere, slightly unknown, and it's a bit of a voyage of discovery. The texture that I've got in the surface of this piece and the variegations of greens I was particularly pleased with, the variegations of surface on here too. You can see on this black edge it's very dark, directional and heavy, which provides a really nice contrast to the metallic threads in this area. This collection of work along this wall in the studio bar represents quite a new direction for me, in that these pieces are much more illustrative than I've maybe been in the past. Still quite abstract because my aesthetic is abstract, but noticeably in this collection here you can see figures. Now figures have appeared in my work over the last couple of months, or maybe 6 months, and I'm not quite sure why. I need some time to still reflect on that, but this grouping here is a collection of friends and myself waiting to go into a restaurant, and we posed for a photograph which then connected with me, and I think in many scenarios we need to celebrate the people who are nearest and dearest to us, and so for me this piece does just that. The composition of the original photograph and the way that I then chose to draw from that particular photograph really struck a chord with me, and I've used the directional marks that were in my drawings to inform and direct the way that I have stitched these particular surfaces. I tend to work on a wool background, so this background cloth here is wool, as it is with just about everything else that I've sewn in this exhibition. Then moving on, I was teaching in Australia about 6 months ago, and there are several pieces here that are from my travels. This one is a cricket ground, just a small cricket ground in Melbourne, and again the direction of my stitch lines is really important, but here the flow of energy and the perspective that the composition gives flows you into the picture. That's my intention anyway. It also happens over here. This piece is called Waiting Lounge, and I was waiting for a little while at Singapore airport last October, and managed to find a little bit of space on the floor to sit and do some yoga in a dark corner, and this was the view that I had during that time, and I loved the perspective where you are taken right into the centre of the composition with the directional marks and the sparkly threads. I'm not really a sparkly thread girl, but every now and again they have their place. These couple of pieces, Winter Landscape 1 and 2, they show really clearly my mark making. They are monochromatic pieces, and by cutting out colour you really focus on the mark making qualities and the textural qualities that you can get, whether with conventional painting and drawing media or with stitch media in this case. So there's some very heavy, dark, thick marks, and then much smoother, light reflecting, light catching marks that I've made with viscose threads. I'm a little bit of a textile geek, and for me these different qualities of threads and different thread types are desperately important, as they would be with any artist. The media that you work with and the way that you articulate your desires with that media are particularly important to you, and we're all nerds in our own way. This collection of work here in the Foyer area is part of a collection called 50 at 50. I was 50 years old last year. I know I don't look it. I feel it. And to celebrate my 50th year, I made 50 pieces of art. And they're all stitched. They're all this size. They're roughly 22 centimetres square. They all started life exactly the same, from exactly the same size of piece of fabric. There's woolen fabric underneath here, and they are all covered, completely covered with machine embroidery. So it's very intense machine embroidery in creating the various different scenes and compositions that you see. This little collection that I have on show here have been inspired by a trip to Venice, and in particular parts of Burano, which is a beautifully colourful island just off the main part of Venice city itself, when all the houses are painted different colours. Really cheery, very, very vibrant, and completely inspiring. Hadn't been anywhere quite like that before. These pieces are also framed, as you'll see. Unlike some of my other work that has no framing, no glazing, it's very accessible, and you kind of want to touch the surface. These pieces are behind glass and kind of preserved. My 50 years have been preserved that little bit more in box frames. This little grouping of 50 at 50 have been inspired by different areas in Abruzzo. Our family have a small house near Tornoreccio, which is in the Chieti region of Abruzzo, near Atessa. And Tornoreccio is known for its mosaics, for its honey, and for Montepulciano, a particular mountain nearby. It's a beautiful little village where I often run my summer schools, and this is one of the main streets. I say main streets, it's tiny. There are less than 2,000 people living there, but nevertheless it provides colour, and if you remember, I'm really interested in showing roots and directional movement through a composition, and all the small streets of these Italian villages do just that. They have beautiful little winding streets that take you from one small piazza to the next. You never quite know where you're going to go. You can lose yourself in the romance of the village, and be delighted by the colour and the warmth of the people and the warmth of their buildings. Very sadly, they're in a different state at the moment, but they will recover, and we should then support them all. This particular one is from Colle di Mezzo. Colle di Mezzo means halfway up a hill. So colle is hill, mezzo half. So halfway up the hill. This particular village clings on to the hillside, and the houses are all painted in different pastel shades. It's very beautiful. This was Jazz Festival night in Atessa, our local, slightly larger town, and everybody was out for this particular event. It was really colourful, it was a beautiful warm evening, and the whole atmosphere was something that I wanted to capture. One of the first occasions that people figured in my work was this one. And this is me and a group of friends having a fantastic meal out in Tornoreccio on the terrace of Mediterraneo restaurant. And it's about friendship, it's about being together, it's about having a good time and remembering really good moments like that. So on this wall of the foyer area. I have a collection of pieces, again from 50 at 50, that are small framed pieces in box frames. These pieces are all inspired by a trip to Morocco last January. And oh my goodness, that trip, more than anything, changed my view of colour and the way that I use colour. It was such a vibrant and unexpected kind of experience that I had there, and it has dramatically changed my work. So prior to this collection, everything was fairly monochromatic in the way that I worked, but you can see here I've gone to town with the colour because that's what I saw when I was there, and that's what I felt when I was there, and I felt the heat and the warmth and the radiated colour from all of the buildings and from the very friendly people that we came across too. This particular one actually is very abstract, but it's a family group photo in the Yves Saint Laurent gardens. Here you can see a slightly skewed version of some of the beautiful tiled flooring that you can see in everywhere really. Particularly in this piece, can you see how the fabric curls and undulates? And so I'm not working on a flat surface. It starts flat, but as I stitch and expand and contract the fabric in different places, then it starts to move and it starts to warp and undulate, and it's no longer the boring flat surface. I love the movement in these pieces. It's why I box framed them, to allow the fabric to do its thing. It's about honesty to the fabric and allowing the fabric to fully breathe and move as it's meant to. This one here, you can see how again that pathway walks through an archway, and again you don't quite know where you're going to end up. And this particular piece here that we'll end on, this was a vision of a women's cooperative that we supported just outside Marrakesh, and they had a fantastic bright pink building with these bright blue flower pots dotted all the way along the front by the road. So my journeys, my trips around the world give me huge amounts of inspiration that I flood into my artwork without drawing first. These pieces of work couldn't really come to full fruition, and I actually see these as extensions of my drawings in my sketchbook. Shining Examples is a piece of work that I made for a project that I was working on a few years ago with military wives here in North Yorkshire, and I worked alongside a friend of mine, Carol Allen, and we worked through bases in Catterick, Dishforth and Topcliffe, working with military families to introduce the idea of sewing and creating as a social activity, but something to really increase everybody's self-esteem and create strong social bonds and strong social groups across different sectors of the military. And in the latter part of that project, which lasted 3 or 4 years in different guises, we connected with Green Howard's Museum in Richmond, and they gave us in the project a whole ream of historical pieces of fabric and haberdashery from uniforms, military uniforms and things like this. These pieces are known as putties. They are woolen leg wraps, almost like gaiters that get wrapped round the leg to protect the legs from thorns, from mud, whatever. They're made of wool, Some of them are over 100 years old. Some of these were used in the First and Second World Wars, which is just phenomenal, and I was honoured to be able to work with them. I was quite scared to sew on them. These pieces, the stitch that I've put on these pieces represents some of the information that I gleaned from the participants in the project. So for instance, this one here, I've stitched 8,049 miles. That's the distance that this particular wife was and often is from her husband, who's based in the Falklands and works in the Falklands on a 6-month rotation. So he's there for 6 months, he maybe comes home for 2 weeks, he's there again for 6 months. That's a really, really significant figure for that particular family. There are other statements and sentiments written over on this one as well. And then I have used signia and motifs from some of the military uniforms on a lot of the others. This particular one and the gold dots that I've stitched here are significant, and they represent groupings. So they're clustered, but there's still a few people who are isolated, and that's my kind of response to the project, that there were still a few people who were isolated and needed support and needed help. This piece has been on exhibition in a few different venues and has had some really, really positive responses, and I'm very proud to be able to show it again here in North Yorkshire at Helmsley Art Centre. I do hope that in the future you'll get a chance to see these pieces of work in the flesh and in the fabric and in the stitch, and please share the video with your friends, and hopefully come and see the exhibition in the future. Thank you.